Grace is strength for the weak, love for the unlovely. It is fathering to the fatherless. It is strength for the weak. It is forgiveness for the bitter and the broken. It is perfect love that will cast out all fear. My name is Ronicia, and this is my story. It all started out when I was a little girl. My parents divorced, and it left a huge void in my life, not having both parents in the home, of just feeling rejected and not loved. And so I would move on to spend many days of my life looking for that acceptance. To me, though, growing up in the church, when I got to be about 13, I loved the idea of serving God, but it seemed like it was good, like it was just for good people, and I wasn't good. I was rejected. I began to dabble in drugs. I started smoking marijuana, and from 13 to 23, I did drugs, and by about age 17, I was hooked on cocaine. All those years I just spent looking for acceptance, wherever I could find it, and I wasn't able to find it. When I was about 23, I got married, and God began to aggressively pursue me and my husband. He caught us with His love, and we said yes, and He instantly delivered us from drug addiction, both of us. I still wasn't good, but God came after me. And so I felt love, and I began to just tell the story every place I went that Jesus had set me free from drugs. And I would tell the checkout lady, anyone I could run into, you've got to hear my story. And then we began to look for a church. So I come into the church with a zeal, like I just want to help, because God has helped me so much. He delivered me, He loved me, He accepted me. And then the church began to teach us. I wanted to know everything Jesus did in red letters. I wanted to understand this Jesus. Several years into it, maybe 5 or 8 years into it, the teachings that they had been teaching us began to take root. It wasn't any longer about serving Christ. It wasn't the focus. Even the messages they were preaching were no longer about Christ, but about serving your pastor, obeying the prophet. They told us it was for God, but it was really about man. I found myself looking for acceptance in that, so I served harder. I showed up more. I was going to do whatever it took to get my pastor's approval, and that became what I was serving. It was a setup by the enemy, and I didn't know it. But from 3 years old, he had set up, formed a weapon of choice for me. I'm going to destroy this one with rejection. And I was rejected by my pastor. It about destroyed me. And so we decided we can crawl to the next place. So we went from church to church to church. It was like my father was rejecting me over and over and over. And then about 2 years ago, I gave up and said, I'm not going to church anymore. So I gave up on church. And my life began to just spiral downward into this dark place. My family kept going to church, but I was not going. I became a victim in that rejection. I blamed my pastors. I blamed church. I blamed false doctrine. I blamed religion. And in all of it, I had lost sight of Jesus totally. I was paralyzed in fear that it was going to happen to me again, so I couldn't go to church again. So during this time, when I was struggling so desperately, I finally started whispering for help, because I had tried so long to control it, and if I keep the reins of the control of it, I'm not going to go through it again. But God started prying open my hand by His grace and His love for me, and saying it's okay for you to let it go. But what He began to do, if I'd be in the shower, I'd be alone at night, and in those quiet nights, the Lord over time started showing me, I'm not leaving. I'm not your dad. I'm not going to leave. I'm not the pastor that rejected you. But the very weapon that the enemy has formed against you, I'm going to use to deliver you, because you're accepted by me. Not because the last 2 years you haven't given any money. The last 2 years you haven't went to church. The last 2 years you haven't read your Bible much. But I love you for you, not what you do for me. Christ fulfilled it all for you. That's why I sent him. One thing that I'm sure of is acceptance is there for me through Christ. So I'm actually, my heart is to cry out to those who have given up on church. The church is definitely not perfect because there's people there. When I show up, it's even less perfect. But if you're bitter, if you're broken, if you've been hurt by people, which haven't we all, but if you find yourself in that place and you've given up on the beautiful church that God is creating, that he said he would build, a body of believers who would love one another, serve one another, but get outside the four walls of the church and love the community and witness and share the gospel. My promise to you is that grace is sufficient. It's a perfect strength and weakness. You can get up from the struggle. You can get up from the bitterness and love community again. God's grace is sufficient. My name is Ronicia. My story will change the world.